They've already left. There was a time when they filled the world with sound and movement. The soft pads of its paws moved through the misty grass. The beating of wings above storm-battered cliffs, the groan of giants in seas that no longer breathe. The earth continues to rotate, but more quietly. It started slowly, an axe here. There's a fire there, a hunger that grew with our shadow. The bark of the thylacine fell silent under the Tasmanian rain. The great flocks of pigeons that once darkened the sky turned to dust. The northern manatees were massacred until the waves showed no movement but foam. For every creature that disappears, a story remains unfinished. A mother lost her partner, a chick that never finds its flock. A final breath exhaled into the hands of the same species he once gazed upon in awe. The tragedy is not just theirs, it's ours. Today we speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Let this be the moment when we finally decide to listen. This is the tragic story of how we exterminated the incredible wildlife of our planet, one species at a time. To understand things, we must not only travel across continents, but also through time, until the day these magnificent creatures breathed the same air as us, early 20th century. Fog hangs over the Tasmanian highlands. A silvery dawn filters through the fibrous-barked trees, transforming ice into smoke. Something is moving underneath, silent, accurate, invisible. It is the last of its kind, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, thylacinus. The cynocephalus has a dog-like posture, though it is not one. Its flanks are striped, a deep black that fades into a stiff, pointed tail. Its broad, angular head can open wider than seems possible. The jaws open like a hinge forged to break bones. It moves through the heather. Its breath condenses in the cold air. The scent of the wallaby floats faintly in the air, musky, warm and fresh. It lowers its head, its ears twitching. Its long snout brushes the frost. A small shoot of grass further on. Muscles tense along its back. Then it leaps. The struggle is brief, a clean death. It eats alone beneath ghostly gums, its stripes merging with the last shadows of night. At dawn, it vanishes into the undergrowth. She rests in the hollow of a fallen tree. The marsupial pouch is warm against her belly, where tiny young twitch. They are blind, pink, fragile, clinging to life and milk. The outside world hums with unfamiliar sounds, axes, dogs, and human voices. There was a time when this island belonged to him, and he shared it only with eagles and demons. Now it resonates with the sound of saws and hooves. Australia is changing rapidly, and soon their species will have no place in this desert. Their fate is already sealed. Twilight returns. She rises again. The air smells of smoke. Beyond the hills, settlers burn land to clear more territory. The firelight flickers like a cruel dawn. She remains in the shadows, her silhouette blending into the dark undergrowth, but not even the night offers security anymore. A bark echoes, sharp and close, then another one, dogs. He remains motionless, listening. The pack follows her trail. She moves down the slope, her muscles tense and her tail stiff as a rudder. For hours, she weaves through ravines and streams, protected by the mist. The dogs lose her scent. Finally, she stops, her chest heaving. She has escaped for now. Each week, the men get closer. Each hunt ends with fewer places to hide. Spring brings a brief abundance. The rains soften the earth. Insects rise in clouds. Their young now emerge from the brood pouch with faint stripes like brushstrokes on their soft down. They follow, clumsy but eager, learning to stalk and to stay still. She guides them through ravines teeming with wallabies. For a time, there is life again. For a while, she is not alone. Summer arrives and the plains grow drier. The settlers disperse, penning up their cattle in what were once hunting grounds. Prey becomes scarce. She ventures into the farmlands, drawn by the bleating of the animals in the corral. The scent of a man lingers. A trap glimmers dimly in the moonlight. She hesitates, her nostrils flared. Behind her, one of her pups lets out a soft whimper. She turns away. Autumn descends in coppery hues and wind. Frost coats the edges of the leaves each morning. Their young, still growing, begin to hunt on their own. They drift further and further away, drawn by the solitude. She watches them vanish into the forest, one by one. Until only silence remains. Alone again, she glides across the heather plains, head down and tail dragging slightly from exhaustion. The old paths smell of death. One of her own has fallen, brought down by the reward, her body hanging on a fence as proof of payment. She lingers nearby, her breath ragged, her ears flat against her head. Winter arrives. The cold seeps deep into the valleys. The forests wither under the frost and the felling. He finds refuge in an abandoned hollow near a dry stream. Now he eats little. His ribs show beneath his stripes. Every movement is slower, every breath heavier. Then one night a trap closes. The sound is sharp, metallic. It shakes once, twice, and then it stays still. A flashlight approaches. Steps, a man's voice. She blinks at the light. His latest image of wild nature is a reflection of that flame. Months later, behind bars at Hobart Zoo, she lies on the cold concrete beneath a bare light bulb. She paces restlessly as night falls, her eyes gleaming with the ghosts of the open forest. People approach to watch her through wire and glass, murmuring in hushed tones. They call her the Tasmanian tigress, but their species does not have tigers. No tribe. No, my friend. On a cold September night in 1936, the lights go out. The air inside his cage turns icy. It huddles against the wall, its breathing slowing. By dawn, it is no longer moving. The last thylacine has died. Outside, the fog still hangs over the plains. As the fog moves eastward, it crosses the sea, and 2 centuries ago, the sea is steel grey and endless. It stirs under a low sky. The snow accumulates laterally. The seagulls squawk over the foam. It is the year 1741. Commander's Islands rise like bones from the frozen Pacific. Here, in these desolate waters, giants once roamed, not with speed or violence, but with the serene rhythm of eternity. Their backs emerged from the surface like slowly moving reefs. His breathing was deep and resonant, long sighs that condensed in the cold air before vanishing into the wind. These were Stella's sea cows, Hydrodamylus gigas, the last of an extinct lineage, grazing at the ends of the earth. They were enormous, up to 10 meters long from nose to tail. Their skin, thick and cracked like driftwood, protected them from the ice. Beneath it, a layer of fat several centimeters thick kept the cold of the sea at bay. Their heads were small, their eyes large and soft, black mirrors reflecting the seaweed and the sky. They had no teeth, only white keratin pads that ground the seaweed into pulp. On calm days, they floated in family groups, gliding gently through the kelp forests. The calves pressed against their mothers' sides, suckling from teats hidden in folds of fat. Each day passed at the same pace as the patient, grass, surface, breathing. The manatees glided through the shallow waters of Bering Island, tearing at seaweed with their lips and leaving pale trails across the green seabed. They surfaced to breathe in unison, their slow exhalations sounding like wind through hollow wood. Under the dim northern light, their silhouettes moved beneath the surface. They had never known predators. No shark dared challenge their size. No orca frequently ventured into these frigid coastal waters. For thousands of years, they had lived and fed undisturbed, the last surviving relatives of manatees and dugongs. But the calm would not last. In the summer of 1741, the expedition of the Russian explorer Vitus Bering was shipwrecked on these same islands. Among the survivors was the naturalist Georg Wilhelm Steller. Starving and half-frozen, he focused his attention on the large animals that floated nearby. He wrote about her kindness, his curiosity. How would they approach the ships, giving them a gentle push, as if greeting a long-lost relative? He watched them feed, their mouths moving slowly and methodically. He named them Hydrodamylus gigas, the giant northern sea cows, but the discovery for them was the beginning of the end. News of these creatures spread quickly. They produced meat as rich as beef and fat as thick as oil. The hunters soon arrived. At first, they came with harpoons and ropes, clumsy in the icy waters. The manatees didn't flee. They couldn't move fast enough. Their flippers, designed for steering, not speed, struggled against the current. Families would gather together when they were attacked. The pups huddled among the adults, harpoons wounded, ropes tangled. The water ran red. Still, they made no sound, only the deep, slow sighs of their kind. Within a few years, the herds began to dwindle. By winter, only scattered groups remained near the kelp forests. However, in the summer, for a time, life returned. The heat thickened the kelp forests, and the survivors grew fat. Mothers carried their young, born in the shelter of the shallow waters. The air smelled of salt and wet stone. But each season brought the hunters back. By then, they arrived in great numbers. Men with axes and knives, barrels too, ready for oil. The manatees sought refuge from winter storms, venturing into bays where the ice crunched against their backs. But there too men followed them. Their ships waited where the wind drove the giants toward the shore. Trapped in the shallow waters, they were easy prey. They were massacred one by one. Their meat was salted for the journey home. Their fat was rendered into oil that burned in lamps far from these shores. No one kept count. No one believed there could be an end. The last recorded sighting occurred only 27 years after the first. By 1768, they had already left. Extinction in less than a generation. Now, beneath the grey waves, only bones remain. They lie where seaweed still sways, a fossilized memory of the world before the harpoon. The seagulls continue to squawk as always, circling endlessly over an absence they do not understand. And as the cold grey waters extend south, they begin to warm up. The steel of the Pacific softens until it becomes turquoise. The ice turns into foam. Seaweed gives way to coral. The air vibrates with heat and color. The ghosts of the north fade away and the next story begins. A new century has dawned. The wind howls along the cliffs of Iceland. The foam shoots upwards from the waves below. The air smells of salt and cold iron. And here, standing side by side on the narrow ledges, are the next victims. The great auks, Pinguinus impennis. Their black backs gleam in the spray. Their white bellies sparkle like distant stars. Nearly a meter tall, they stand upright, their wings close to their bodies. Their wings are too small and stiff for flight. They are not designed for the air, but for the sea. Every spring they return to these same cliffs, generation after generation, drawn by the memory of the nesting cries that once filled the air. The colony awakens at dawn. The pairs approach the edges of the rocks with clumsy steps, clacking their thick beaks in greeting, one egg per pair carefully placed on bare stone, smooth, mottled, fragile. Both parents take turns protecting it from the seagulls circling overhead. The sound of the sea echoes through the colony. The rhythm of the waves, the rustling of feathers against the rocks, the low, guttural murmurs of the birds. At the break of dawn, the hunters of the sea rise. The auks tilt forward and fall, beating their wings uselessly in the air before hitting the water with a splash. Then they disappear beneath the surface. Here, they move with impossible grace. Their webbed feet propel them forward and their wings spread like flippers. They spin and dive, zigzagging between beams of green light, chasing fish. The schools scatter before them. The auks turn sharply. Their bodies streamlined like torpedoes, their eyes wide open and motionless. Each dive lasts barely a minute, but in that time they fill their throats with silver. Upon surfacing, they float among the waves like living buoys, their beaks gleaming with scales. This is his kingdom, the sea between Iceland and Newfoundland, stretched out cold and immense, as is happening today. In winter, when storms engulf the islands and ice blankets the coast, they remain here. They dive beneath the storms, following the sandbanks southward. For centuries, they thrived in these waters, untouched by the changing seasons, untouched by predators, except for the seals that lurked in the depths and the seagulls that stole their eggs. But change comes quietly. First, the boats, wooden, creaking, full of men searching for fish, feathers, oil, and meat. The flightless, trusting great auk doesn't flee when they arrive. When the men first disembark on their breeding islands, the birds watch with curiosity. The first clubs fall at dawn. The birds collapse in silence. Hundreds are captured in a single morning. The meat is salted. The feathers are made into pillows, the fat is rendered into oil, and yet the men return. More ships, more labor, more hunger. The colonies that once covered entire islands are reduced to scattered pairs. In spring, fewer and fewer birds return to their shelves. The wind still howls, but the cliffs grow still. Those that remain fiercely protect their eggs, but now the danger comes not from seagulls, but from human hands. The eggs are stolen for collectors, the shells sold as treasures. One wrong step can cut short a life that took weeks to form. In 1844, only one known breeding pair remained. On LD Island, off the coast of Iceland, they stand side by side. The female incubates her single egg. The male keeps watch, his gaze fixed on the horizon. For thousands of years, this pattern remained unchanged. Until now. One morning, the men return. They scale the cliffs with nets and clubs, shouting above the wind. The birds don't flee, they can't. The first blow lands. The female collapses, her egg rolling toward the edge of the rock. The male thrashes, beating his wings uselessly. The hunters attack again. When the wind finally died down, they both lay motionless, their feathers slippery with blood and splashes. One of the men stepped forward nonchalantly and crushed the egg with his boot. A soft crack, a smear of yolk, and then silence. The last great auks have died. The last flightless seabird in the world vanished in an instant. The sea continues its indifferent course, the waves lapping at the rock where they once lay. Their bodies are collected, preserved, and displayed in glass cases in distant cities. Their egg fragments are sold to collectors who have never felt the sea breeze of LD Island. But no matter how hard we try, we cannot preserve what mattered, the sound of their calls. The shuffling of their feet on the wet stone, the glare of the sun on the oil-black feathers. Those things now belong to the wind, and the wind remembers everything. Every spring, the cliffs still wait. The same ledges lie bare beneath the same sky. Seagulls nest where razorbills used to be located. Their cries echo strangely in the void, bouncing off the stone as if calling to something that will never answer. In the sea, the fish still shimmer in silvery clouds. The currents still churn, cold and green, yet the balance has shifted. Without the auks, fewer nutrients reach the surface. The chain of life loosens. The waves now only carry echoes. The great auk was never meant for war or escape. It couldn't fly faster than nets or swim faster than ships. It had no claws, no venom, no cunning. It had only devotion, a calm, unwavering rhythm that synchronized with the pulse of the sea. And it was this, above all, that condemned him. Now, as the wind lashes the black cliffs, you can still imagine them, their black backs glistening in the rain, their white breasts catching the light, their bodies lined up in solemn rows against the horizon, waiting for the mate who will never return. Let's continue. At the end of the 19th century, the Caribbean sun burns white on the horizon. The sea is smooth and blue, a mirror broken only by the slow rise and fall of breathing bodies. On a sandbar surrounded by mangroves, Caribbean monk seals, Neomonicus, rest. Tropicalis. Their slender silhouettes gleam in the salt and light, 2 meters of muscle and grace. Their soft eyes, shining like tears, squint in the heat. Around them, crabs scurry through the wet sand. The frigates circle in the empty sky. It is the season of candles and smoke. The seals awaken with the sunset. They raise their heads, twitch their whiskers. The air is filled with the scent of the sea, a slight movement of their flippers, a glide across the shallows, and they disappear, slipping beneath the surface like shadows. Below, the world blooms with color. Coral forests rise from the seabed, teeming with swift-swimming fish and drifting clouds of plankton. Seals glide among the coral spirals with the precision of a dancer. Each breath releases silvery bubbles that spiral upward. Her large, dark eyes catch every glimmer of light, scanning for movement. Suddenly, a flash, a squid hovering just behind the reef. The seal tenses, spins, and lunges forward. In an instant, it closes the distance, snapping its jaws shut on its prey. The sea fills with a soft cloud of ink, then returns to calm. For hours they hunt, drifting among reefs and sandbanks. Snappers, octopuses, and small crustaceans disappear into eager mouths. Their dives are deep. They are patient creatures, built for endurance, not haste. When night falls completely, they return to the shallows. Moonlight spills onto their backs as they crawl ashore, leaving furrows with their bellies in the wet sand. They lie side by side with their eyes closed. At dawn, the first pelicans arrive. The air vibrates with the beating of their wings and the rustling of leaves in the mangroves. Seals stretch, yawn, and turn on their sides. The pups whimper softly, nursing as the tide rises. The mothers stroke them with their snouts, tenderly and unhurriedly. On these tranquil beaches, life once followed this same simple pattern. Birth, hunt, rest, repeat. Every spring, the beaches teemed with life and sounds. The pups meowed in the shade of the mangrove roots. The males called from the water, their deep grunts echoing in the coves. The air was thick with the scent of salt and life, yet the peace was fragile. The same islands that had given them shelter had become crossroads for ships, and with the ships came the men, hunters with clubs, knives, and oil barrels. At first, they came only a few times. The seals watched with cautious curiosity as the men disembarked. The smell of smoke and sweat was new to them. Then the attacks began. Slow bodies crawled toward the boats, turning the water red. Each seal yielded liters of oil, fuel for lamps in distant cities. The raids became more frequent. The beaches that once shimmered with elegant grey shapes fell silent. The mothers fled, leaving their young behind. The little ones cried until the tide swept them away. At night, the reefs pulsed faintly with phosphorescence, and in that glow, dark silhouettes floated, sharks drawn by the smell of blood. By the turn of the century, the flocks were already decimated. A few scattered individuals remained among the smaller keys, resting on deserted sandbanks. They had become ghosts, glimpsed and forgotten. A few fishermen still saw them, silent and wide-eyed among the waves, watching from a distance. But nobody listened. Even so, the rhythms of the sea continued. The spring warmth awakened life. The few survivors mated in the shallow waters, giving birth in the warmth of the sun. The cries of the pups could be heard faintly over the waves. Then the hurricanes came. Walls of wind and water swept away their shelters, scattering debris across the reefs. The mangroves fell, the beaches disappeared. Those who survived the hunters now faced the fury of the storms. By winter, when calm returned, there were even fewer survivors. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1952 near Jamaica. A fisherman, while hauling in his nets, glimpsed a dark silhouette that emerged next to his boat. It stared at him for a moment. Then it submerged and disappeared. No one would ever see one again. Decades passed. The corals bleached beneath the increasingly warm water. The mangroves withered. The cries of the seagulls grew louder without the deep voices of the seals to answer them. In 2008, scientists declared the Caribbean monk seals extinct. They were creatures of great docility. He did not pursue us, he did not challenge us, nor did he flee from us. It simply lived, basked in the sun, raised its young and shared its beaches with all who came. The world it inhabited was a paradise, shallow seas that shimmered turquoise, coral forests bursting with color, the song of birds and the rustling of palm trees. On some forgotten sandbank, perhaps the sea still remembers its shape. But the living no longer come here. The mangroves become denser, the beaches quieter. The same sunlight burns above, bright and relentless. The same water shines blue and infinite. Only the sound has changed. Almost at the same time, another tragedy unfolded in the sky. A great disappearance. Dawn breaks over an ocean of forest. The air is calm, laden with dew, until a sound is heard, a deep, trembling wave that grows and intensifies like the wind before a storm. Then from the horizon they arrive, a river of wings, a living sky, passenger pigeons, ectopistes, migratorius. They move with perfect rhythm, billions of bodies slicing the light into ribbons. The sun transforms their feathers into fire, coppery backs that flash gold, bluish-grey wings that shine like steel. Its flight hums in the air, a sound that is felt more than heard. Below, the oak groves tremble in response, their branches swaying as if bowing to their passing. It is the 19th century, and this is North America before the silence. They travel in waves that stretch from one horizon to the other. For hours, sometimes days, the sky remains alive. Each bird weighs barely half a kilo, but together they darken the sun. Beneath them, the deer are startled and flee. The wolves stop to watch. When they land, the air fills with the sound of beating wings and the crackling of branches. The trees bend under their weight. Each limb trembles beneath the shifting mass of feathers. Their calls rise and fall, a rippling murmur that echoes through miles of forest. They feed in unison, bobbing their heads rhythmically as they pluck acorns and beechnuts from the ground. In their wake, the earth glitters with husks and pods. At dawn, they take flight from their perches in dense spirals, a column of wings ascending towards the light. They fly at great speed, around 60 kilometers per hour, according to historical accounts. Their long tails flash white as they turn. The falcons dive at each other, talons outstretched, but the flocks move as one, bending, folding, and reorganizing around the predator until it is swallowed by their wings. The few who fall disappear into the forest below. When spring arrives, their instinct drives them north. The forests of the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, and Wisconsin. They nest in colonies that stretch for miles and miles, each tree harboring hundreds of nests, each branch teeming with movement. The smell of guano, the flapping of wings, the chorus of cooing, it all fills the air like a storm. The mothers protect the pale grey eggs under their bodies. The males bring food from nearby clearings. Their young grow quickly. For millennia, its rhythm synchronized with that of the earth. The oak trees dropped their acorns. The pigeons came to feed. Wolves and foxes hunted the fallen. But in this century, something changes. The sound of the wind in the feathers meets a new sound, that one with iron wheels on rails. The trains carry the hunters to the heart of their world. The markets of New York and Chicago demand meat, feathers, and spectacle. The men arrive with shotguns and nets. They light bonfires under the roosts to scare the birds away. At night, when the flocks gather densely in the trees, the shooting begins. The sky, once teeming with life, is filled with thunder. The forest floor becomes a carpet of corpses. The hunters bury them by the thousands in barrels of salt. Even so, the pigeons return. Year after year, they repopulate the sky, fewer in number, but still countless. The survivors know nothing of what awaits them. They fly together, feed each other, live together. Around the 1870s, the large flocks began to disperse. The air became thinner. The colonies dwindled to scattered groups. Forests were cleared for farmland. Acorns disappeared and the great oak trees fell. With each passing year, the rhythm became more unstable. At the end of the century, only fragments of their once endless migrations remain. A few hundred here, a few dozen there. Hunters continue to hunt even these birds, exterminating the last remaining specimens. In 1901, the last wild passenger pigeon was shot dead in Ohio. In Cincinnati, a small bird paces back and forth on the wire floor of its cage. Its name is Martha. Its plumage is faded, its wings are rarely used. Around her, visitors stroll through the zoo, glancing over and following her. She is the last of her kind. On September 1st, 1914, she dies silently, her heartbeat fading into the murmur of a city that has long since forgotten the sound of wings. The forests are still standing, but something is missing. The oak trees still stand, but their seeds are scattered, unclaimed. The predators that once followed the flocks now roam, hungry. The earth lies still. The air, once vibrant with movement, feels heavy. Where pigeons once flew, now silence reigns. Imagine yourself standing under that vanished sky. Witnessing their return would be seeing the world alive and in motion. Yet it was that very abundance that doomed them. They gathered so densely that no human being could believe they could disappear. But the heavens can empty faster than they fill. It only takes one generation to turn a storm into calm. In that same century, tragedy struck another species. Dawn slowly rises over Pinta Island. The sun rises over a black rim of volcanic rock, casting golden light upon a world that seems frozen in time. The air is dry, loaded with salt and dust. The few shrubs scratch the ground. The cacti stand like sentinels, and moving among them, silent, deliberate, ancient. One last giant, the Pinta Island tortoise, Chelonoidis abingdonii. Its name is Lonesome George. Its enormous shell, over 1.5 meters long, holds the map of a century. Cracked by the sun and dotted with lichens, it shines with a dull bronze hue in the morning heat. His long, muscular neck stretches forward. Its head swings like a pendulum. Long ago, its kind shaped the island. Herds of tortoises roamed these slopes, forging paths through the cacti and scattering seeds with each slow, crunchy chew. Wherever they went, life followed. Grass sprouted in his footprints. The birds nested in the hollows of their shells. But everything changed with the arrival of sails. In the 19th century, whaling ships and explorers arrived, their holds eager for meat. The sailors captured the turtles by the hundreds. They turned them face up and rolled them to the shore. Those left behind faced a more silent enemy. The goats, brought to the shore as food, escaped and multiplied. By the time George was born, the island was deserted. Now the land is fragile. The soil is thin, riddled with goat tracks that lead nowhere. The green has disappeared, replaced by dust and silence. George moves through it as if it were a memory. His claws leave marks that the wind soon erases. When he raises his head, light shines in his eyes, dark, ancient, incomprehensible. At midday, he finds a sliver of shade beneath a cactus. The air trembles with heat. Open your beak and take a bite out of the fleshy pad. Juice runs from his beak, staining the dust. Each bite seems earned, a victory over time. His throat moves in a slow ripple as he swallows. He pauses, blinks, savoring the air. When the brief rains arrive, they transform the island. In a single night, green shoots emerge from the ashes. The air smells of wet stone. George moves through this ephemeral paradise with a restrained joy. He eats ravenously, pulling up vines and crushing flowers with his mouth. For a few weeks, life feels full again. The finches flutter near it, pecking at the insects their clumsy feet shoo away. To them, it's a living relic that still harbors life, but the rains vanish as quickly as they came. The green withers, the streams dry up, the goats return to gnaw the roots to dust. George drinks from a shallow hollow, muddy, warm. Then it retreats back into the shade. Its shell creaks softly as it lands. The years pass at the leisurely pace of its kind. The island barely changes, but across the sea humans notice. They come not to hunt, but to save. In 1971, scientists rediscovered it. Only. They call him Lonesome George. He becomes the rarest creature on Earth, the last of his kind. Cameras capture the moment. The world watches as he raises his head and blinks, oblivious to everything, unhurried. He is moved from his island to a sanctuary in Santa Cruz. Their new home is green again, surrounded by birdsong, human conversation, the hum of the machines. Scientists introduce females of related species, hoping that in some corner of his old heart, instinct will awaken. But decades pass and no egg hatches. George remains alone. He feeds as always. His tongue brushes against the cactus pads. Its eyes half close when the sun warms its shell. It still sways as it walks. In the dry season, the sanctuary falls silent. Tourists are scarce. Scientists leave at nightfall. Alone in the dim light, George rests his head under his shell. His breathing slows. His heart, forged for a century of endurance, gives its last beat. On June 24, 2012, the last turtle on Pinta Island died. With him, a line that began millions of years ago fades into silence. His body lies heavy and motionless, the weight of time itself. Those who find him remain silent. Around him, the air buzzes with insects, oblivious to the fact that the story has ended. Today, its shell remains, preserved behind glass. Visitors walk past the display case. Children touch it, gazing at the giant who once carried a world on his back. They see a creature both strange and familiar, but they don't see the forests he traversed, the other figures who once moved beside him. They do not hear the crunch of their footsteps on the dry earth. Pinta now lies silent. The goats are gone, retreating in an attempt to reclaim what they've lost. The bushes are growing back. Green shoots are climbing the stones once more. Life, fragile and tenacious, is forging its way through the dust. But George's species will not return. As evening falls, the island turns bronze. Shadows stretch across the black rock. The sea sparkles in the distance. The land feels ancient again, immutable, indifferent, expectant. Somewhere in the whisper of the dry wind, one can sense the scraping of a heavy shell, the slow rhythm of footsteps fading into the horizon. The sun sets behind the caldera, painting the world in molten gold. Another place. Again. The final chapters of the 19th century. Another tragedy. The fog curls around the craggy peaks of the Pyrenees. Here the dawn is cold and dim. The light barely warms the stone. A single shadow moves against the cliff wall. Little, sure, Fearless, the Pyrenean ibex, Capra pyrenaica, Pyrenean pyrenaica. Its fur, the color of mountain dust and sunlight, blends in with the rock. Its muscles ripple beneath it as it climbs, each step chosen, each breath sharp and visible in the frigid air. She is the last one. The slope rises steeply beneath her hooves. Lichens cling to the stone, their green dulled by frost. She lowers her head, gently grazing the rock with her teeth to tear off a morsel. The sound is faint, almost delicate, lost in the vastness that surrounds her. The wind hums through the valleys, carrying with it the faint scent of snow and pine. Their horns curved backward like two sickles, thick at the base and sharpened to dark points. They gathered on the sunlit meadows in spring, the males clashing in resounding duels that echoed across the stone. Sparks flew from horn to horn. Dust and hair filled the air. The victors claimed their partners and the mountain cycle continued. But those herds no longer exist. The echoes have faded away. There was a time when wolves stalked them, eagles watched them from the high thermals. Predators tested the weak and sick, but the balance was maintained. Then the hunters arrived, men with rifles and dogs. The ibex, cornered and outnumbered, watched their range shrink. The forests gave way to villages. The meadows became pastures. The world of stone and snow was transformed into a world of fences and roads. Of course, she remembers none of it, only instinct passed down like an old song. It drives her to climb higher when she senses danger, to seek solitude when the valleys become deafening, to keep moving forward even when each ledge seems colder than the last. Around midday, the fog dissipates. The sunlight sparkles on the ice, turning each flake into fire. She stands on a narrow ledge, gazing down at the world. Below, rivers shimmer silver, winding through green valleys. The distant tinkling of goat bells rises. Their tones sound strange, domesticated, embocado. She listens but doesn't approach them. In summer, the mountain softens. The thaw nourishes the bright alpine flowers, edelweiss, gentian, and thyme. She grazes among them, leaving delicate footprints with her hooves in the damp earth. Bees buzz softly, their hum echoing faintly against the stone. Life briefly returns to the tracks. Its coat gleams a golden tawny in the radiant sun. It eats, drinks, and rests. But even in this quiet time, the scars remain. Across the valleys, trails wind through the rock. Wooden huts cling to the ledges where its kind once grazed freely. The faint crackle of the gunshots sometimes gets lost in the wind. She freezes each time, ears pricked, nostrils flared, then silence again and only the whisper of melting snow. Autumn arrives with storms. The rain lashes the cliffs, making them slippery and treacherous. Now she moves carefully with perfect balance. The valleys below glow golden with dying leaves. Food is scarce. She carefully descends to the lower slopes, where moss still clings to the stone. Before, she would have found others here, herds of mothers and young, huddled together for warmth. Now she grazes alone beneath the drenched pines. Winter comes without mercy. The snow piles up on her back, clinging to her fur. She lowers her head against the wind, her breath turning into white smoke. Each step becomes a titanic effort. The air thins. Hunger torments her. She descends toward the valleys, toward the scent of humans and their fields. It moves silently at dusk. A fence blocks her path. She stops, nostrils flared, then jumps over. On the other side, the snow is shallower. Blades of grass glisten in the moonlight. She eats quickly, nervously, every sound a warning. In the distance, a dog barks. She freezes, her heart racing. The mountain behind her awaits her, dark and cold. The cold seasons lengthen. Shelters are scarce. His body, forged for the impossible, still stands long after others have fallen. Yet he is not immortal. None of them were. Morning arrives clear and relentless. Frost covers his horns, the wind calms down. For a moment, the world seems almost at peace. She stands atop a ridge overlooking a sea of clouds, the sun gilding her fur. Below, nothing stirs, no rival calls to her, no companion answers. She lowers her head, takes a step forward, and her helmet slips. There is no crying, only silence. It is the year 2000. When the search teams arrive, they find her body slumped among the rocks, her fur still glistening in the dim light. She is the last Pyrenean ibex. With her, an entire lineage disappears from the world of the living. But for a brief and strange instant, science refuses to let her go. In 2003, a team of biologists attempted to reverse the extinction. Using preserved skin, they cloned its cells and implanted them into a domestic goat. Months later, a kid was born, a wild goat reborn from memory. For a few minutes, it breathed, kicked, and lived. Then his lungs collapse and he becomes immobile. The first species to return from extinction becomes the first to die twice. Today, the Pyrenees remain silent, eternal. The cliffs are the same, the snow still falls. But the music of the horns, the stampede of hooves, the echoes of spring duels, all are gone. In their place, the wind whizzes among the ridges. The fog clings to the forest like breath to glass. The Monteverde cloud forest never sleeps. Each leaf drips water. Each root glows with green life. The air hums softly. Rain, insects, Beneath the moss and orchid vines, the earth is full of life and movement, and here, in a world that never dries up, a spark of color shines brighter than anything else. A flame among shadows, a golden toad, Incilius perigles. It measures barely 5 centimeters, but it burns like sunlight trapped in amber. Its smooth, shiny skin is a molten orange. Every pulse of its throat flashes like liquid fire. It rests on the edge of a shallow pool surrounded by others. Dozens, hundreds. The males glow like tiny lanterns scattered across the forest floor. They are waiting. The rains have arrived, and with them, life. Every year, at the start of the rainy season, these toads emerge from the hidden burrows where they have hibernated during the dry months. The forest, heavy with mist and aromas, trembles at their calls. High-pitched trills echo among the dripping leaves, a chorus that fills the valley. The females arrive later, their plumage olive and inconspicuous, drawn by the pools where the males gleam in patient rows. Gradually, pairs form. The eggs are laid in the soft mud. They are gelatin filaments that curl up like glass under the surface. The puddles are ephemeral, born of the rains. They accumulate in small hollows among the roots, fed by the constant drizzle and mountain mist. For the toads, their entire life cycle depends on this delicate rhythm: rain, egg, tadpole, metamorphosis. If there is very little water, the puddles disappear. If there is too much, the eggs will fall apart. The golden toad is perfectly adapted to its habitat. Its skin absorbs moisture from the air. Its color warns predators to stay away. It moves with quick, graceful hops, flicking out its tongue to catch insects floating in the air. The cloud forest is their sanctuary. This is a place where sunlight rarely touches the ground, where every breath tastes of moss and water. But the balance has begun to falter. In 1987, the rains come late. The air feels different, warmer, drier. The puddles shrink. Tadpoles writhe in shallow pools that soon crack under the dissipating mist. The males wait motionless, calling silently. Their throats swell and deflate, their voices echoing unanswered. In the treetops, moisture moves. The clouds that once enveloped this mountain begin to lift, dispersed by the changing air. For the aquatic creatures, it is a silent catastrophe. With the passing of the seasons, fewer toads return. Those that do carry something unseen, a fungus, invisible. They spread through moist soil and their porous skin, chytrid fungus. It penetrates without us noticing, growing under their shiny skin, preventing them from breathing and absorbing water. The toads begin to die, not in large numbers or visibly, but silently, one by one. A golden glimmer here, gone the next day. A single motionless shape next to a drying pond. The forest remains lush, the rain continues, but the toad's croaking begins to fade. By 1988, the ponds fill again, and a few survivors return. The males gather once more, their colors gleaming against the dull green of the world. They croak, persistent and hopeful, but no woman comes. The nights are quiet. The following year, a researcher finds only one male. Only. Bright. Challenging. He waits by a pond that reflects the grey sky. He calls out again and again to a companion who will never answer. His voice is lost in the mist, a faint sound drowned out by the rain. Weeks pass and he remains. Until one day he too disappears. It's 1989. The golden toad was never seen again. The cloud forest still teems with life. Hummingbirds flit among the orchids, monkeys howl from the highest branches, but something irreplaceable has vanished. The pools remain, but now they are silent. The orange jewels no longer shimmer among the roots. No choir welcomes the rainy season. All that remains is the constant dripping of rain. Now, scientists are searching for the reasons, tracking rising temperatures, cloud movement, and the spread of disease. The golden toad wasn't hunted, trapped, or traded. It simply disappeared as the world warmed, because the rain was falling differently, as the invisible fungus silently spread through their home. Some say that deep in the forest, hidden beneath layers of moss and roots, they can still survive, undiscovered, waiting for the return of the perfect rain. But decades have passed, and silence has settled in. The puddles fill and dry up again. Their extinction marks the beginning of a pattern, the disappearance of species not because we have killed them, but the world around them was changing faster than they could breathe. However, this next one was undoubtedly the work of man. The morning dawns silently over the savannah. The heat builds up even before the sun is high in the sky, bending the air over the grass. A row of acacias cuts across the horizon, black against a golden sky. Beyond them, a shadow moves, slow, deliberate, immense. The western black rhinoceros, Diceros bicornis longipes. Its thick grey skin folds into heavy plates that ripple with every step. Two horns rise from its broad snout, the front one long and curved like a drawn sword, and the second shorter. Flies buzz around his ears, landing and rising in time with his breathing. Her cub follows closely behind, small and watchful, its quick steps synchronized with her own. Together, they cross the tall grass, each movement a poem of weight and grace. The mother pauses beneath a thorny tree. Her long, prehensile lips curl around the tender leaves. It feeds slowly, tearing and chewing while its tail idly moves to shoo away flies. The youngster imitates her, clumsy but eager. The morning vibrates with life. Cicadas buzz, doves coo, the wind carries the distant scent of rain. But beneath it all lies something more, a disquiet, a silence that deepens each year. For millions of years their species roamed these lands, shaping them with every step. Their trails wound through the grass and thorns, and their dung scattered seeds everywhere. They were the gardeners of the plains, keeping the savannah open, fertile and full of life. Their senses were keen, their ears perked at the slightest whisper, their nostrils flared to detect both danger and water. However, even at full strength, they were not made for the sound of gunfire. In the rainy season, life flourished. The rain turned the dust green, and the rivers carved new channels in the land. Birds filled the sky, and rhinoceroses bathed in shallow pools, their skins slippery with mud and glistening in the sun. Calves played in the still waters. The savannah thrived, elephants, zebras, antelopes, all migrating slowly through a living world. Then came the dry months. The earth cracked and dried. The grass yellowed and turned to dust. The rhinos ventured deeper each day, sniffing the sparse bushes with their wide mouths in search of moisture. When the air shimmered, they could smell the water long before they saw it. She led her calf. Each slow step, every pause was measured. But in the dry season, the other hunters also arrived. They are not lions, they are not hyenas, humans. They moved through the thorny scrub with rifles and steel traps. They came for the horn, that hard, fibrous growth of keratin, like the hair on their own heads, but more valuable than gold. They arrived at dusk, when the wind dissipated the smell of blood. One shot was enough. A single crack ripped through the air. Birds took flight from the trees, dust rose, and another giant fell. The sound echoed across the plain, fading into silence. The poachers worked swiftly, their blades gleaming, their hands dripping with blood. The corpse was left for the vultures. The confused calf circled the body until nightfall, emitting a soft moan until the stars answered it. In just a century, their numbers dwindled from thousands to tens. Governments declared sanctuaries, rangers patrolled the borders, but the poachers kept coming. The rhinos became wary. They hid during the day and only drank by moonlight. Mothers led their calves into the thickest undergrowth, leaving faint, fragmented trails. By the 1980s, only a few remained, scattered across the savannas of Cameroon. A few sightings, a few muddy footprints, a single hornprint in drying clay. The park rangers searched, walking through the sun and the storm, following the faintest trail. The rhinos had learned to disappear, to move without making a sound, to trust no scent. They lived in patches of forest that no one visited, emerging only when the rains softened the earth. The last confirmed sighting was recorded in 2006. A solitary, heavy-set woman with scars walked through the tall grass near a dry riverbed. She kept her head down as if cautious or remembering something. She stopped, turned once into the wind, and continued on her way. No one ever saw her again. 5 years later, the western black rhinoceros was declared extinct. The calf that once followed its mother would be old today if it had lived. Perhaps she wandered alone for a while, following forgotten paths. Perhaps she found water for the last time under a waning moon. Perhaps she lay down beside a withered acacia and never rose again. No one saw her. Let's continue, 19th century. Dawn breaks over the South African savanna, pouring molten gold over a seemingly endless land. The horizon trembles in the heat. A gentle breeze brushes against the grass. Then, faintly at first, comes a sound like distant thunder, hooves, hundreds of them. The earth begins to hum. A herd of quaggas, equus quagga quagga, move across the plains. They are creatures of contrasts, half zebra, half horse. From the front, their faces and shoulders are covered in striking brown and white stripes. But halfway down the body, the marks fade away, dissolving into smooth, golden skin. The sunlight reflects off their fur, warm as burnished copper. They move in time with the wind across the grass. With their heads down and their muzzles darkened by dew, they graze on the sweet shoots that emerge after the rains. The air is filled with sounds, harsh barking echoes across the plains. A long-legged, unsteady foal leans against its mother's flank. She gently strokes it with her muzzle. The savanna is rugged, but it provides everything the herd needs. In summer, the grass ripples in golden waves and clouds rise above the Drakensberg. In winter, the rivers dry up to mere threads and dust settles on the horizon. The quagga follows the rains, tracing slow arcs across the land, guided by memory and instinct. It knows where the buried water lies. It knows which valleys bloom first after the storms. Its world moves in circles: birth, hunger, migration, return. A stallion stands apart, head held high, scanning the horizon. His mane bristles at the scent of a jackal on the wind. He snorts, a short, sharp sound, and the herd huddles together, the foals squeezed between their bodies. The danger passes and calm returns. Life in the wild is a constant negotiation between stillness and flight. But new predators are coming, those they cannot outrun in speed or cunning. The year is 1820. The settlers have arrived across the plains. Ox-drawn wagons, driven by men with rifles slung over their shoulders, advance across the grasslands. Fences rise like scars, interrupting the old grazing routes. To the settlers, the quagga is nothing special. It's the competition. They graze where cattle should graze. They drink where cattle should drink. Their beauty means nothing in a world of profit and possession. The first hunts begin at dusk. Gunshots flash, echoing through the tall grass. The pack flees, terrified. Some fall, others vanish into the night. The survivors do not return. At dawn, the air smells of gunpowder and iron. Vultures circle lazily over what remains. Years pass. The rhythm of the plains crumbles. The great herds dwindle. The hunters take the hides and the meat, and later, just the trophies. The sound of hooves faded until only a few herds remained, isolated, scattered, ghosts of what once populated the earth. By the 1870s, the quagga existed only in the memories of most of those who had once lived alongside it. No one saw them in herds anymore. And then, in 1883, far from the savanna and the open sky, the last quagga rests in its cage at the Amsterdam Zoo. Its fur is dull, its stripes faded. The city hums around him, steam engines, bells, and rain on the cobblestones. He closes his eyes. His breath leaves his chest, slow and final. A species that once echoed across a continent fades into silence. Nobody knows that she is the last one. No monument commemorates the moment. The world just keeps turning. Back in South Africa, the savanna continues its course. The grass grows, the seasons change. But something is missing. The plains are quieter now. Herds of gazelles still leap. Wildebeest still gather at the watering holes. Yet the air feels emptier, as if the earth itself were remembering. Underground, the bones of the quaggas lie among layers of dust. For nearly a century, the quagga became a myth. But even extinction, it seems, is not always the end. In the 1980s, scientists began studying the quagga's relatives. Plain zebras that still live in the wild in the Karoo carry traces of its blood. DNA reveals what the eye always suspected. The quagga wasn't a separate species, but a branch of the zebra's family tree, and so begins a quiet resurgence. Selective breeding, generation after generation. Slowly, the stripes begin to fade again in their descendants. The front is darkening, the hindquarters turn golden. The pattern blurs into that familiar blend of two halves. In a fenced reserve in South Africa, under the same blazing sun, a small herd grazes. Their heads bob in the breeze through the grass. The sound of hooves returns. The foals scamper through the dust, their coats pale and patchy, their stripes faint and fleeting. Quagga Project calls them rebred, not reborn. They are not the same, not entirely, but they are similar enough to awaken something primal in the heart of the earth. And when they run, their manes flying in the wind, the savannah seems to breathe again. As the sun sets behind the hills, the herd moves toward the horizon. Their silhouettes blur together in the dust and light, just as they did a century ago. The sky is burning orange. The grass shines golden. For a moment, past and present walk side by side. But not all of humanity's victims met their end in recent centuries. One group fell much earlier, practically at the dawn of modern humanity, long before we built the first major cities in the Fertile Crescent. 10,000 years ago, the wind moans across an endless white plain. The ice stretches to the horizon, fractured and gleaming under a pale sun. The air is freezing, clean, ancient. Beneath it, life endures. Excellent, slow-moving, patience life. Shadows drift across the frozen meadows, colossal forms, woolly, horned, struggling through the snow. The woolly mammoth, Mammuthus primigenius. A matriarch leads her pack, her tusks drawing ivory arcs as she parts the snow to reach the rough reeds growing below. Vapor rises from her breath, spiraling into the still air. Behind her, the calves stumble on their way. They imitated his every move. The herd huddles together against the wind. Their fur is long and matted, covered in frost and dust. Beneath that armor of fur lies warmth. They move with the rhythm of the earth. South in spring, north again when the summer grasses bloom along the edges of the retreating glaciers. The world itself breathes with their migration. Each step scatters seeds, breaks the frozen earth, awakens life beneath death. Yet the ice melts faster each year. Streams carve new paths where none existed before. Forests creep stealthily toward the plains. The world that created them begins to fade. Far to the south, beneath dripping canopies and ancient trees, another giant is on the move. The earth trembles when the giant ground sloth, Megatherium americanum, stands tall, towering above ferns and palms. Its claws, curved and long like sickles, bring down a branch laden with leaves. Eat methodically. His eyes remain half closed, as if nothing in the world could hurry him. A rough brown coat covers his enormous body, and moss and small orchids grow on his back. He has no enemies, or so he believes. His skin is thick, his size immense, but in the shadows of the forest, something new is watching him. A smaller creature, faster, more cunning than any of the previous ones. Humans. They follow them in silence, with spears tipped with sharp stones. The smoke from their campfires drifts through the trees, strange and unfamiliar. The sloth stops mid-bite, sniffs the air, and turns. The hunters attack. The giant staggers, confused, bleeding from wounds he doesn't understand. He collapses among the ferns. At dawn, the forest had reclaimed it. On the other side of the ocean, in lands untouched by ice, dawn breaks in the southern hemisphere. The fog clings to the forests of ferns and podocarps. Here, another relic from that lost era moves in silence. The giant moa, Dinornis robustus. Unable to fly, enormous, with a build similar to the shadow of an ostrich, it reaches 3 meters in height, with its neck outstretched, and has plumage mottled with brown and grey. It feeds among the vegetation, cutting the tender shoots with its beak with a smooth but firm gait. On these islands there are no mammalian predators. There is no need to hurry or be afraid, but that peace will not last. Polynesian navigators arrive in canoes. They bring dogs, they bring hunger. They plunder the moa nests, crushing their eggs under bare feet. One by one, the great birds disappear, hunted for their meat, their forests razed to create barren lands. His murderers carve his bones into tools and his feathers into ornaments. In 2 centuries, the moa will have disappeared. Back on the tundra, spring returns for the last time. The mammoths follow the melting rivers north, but the world they knew has turned against them. The grasslands turn to mud. Insects swarm. The air, once cold and clear, is now thick with heat. The calves sink into the marshy ground where they once walked with ease. The matriarch roars. Her cry echoes throughout the valley. It only receives echoes in response. From the ridges, the men watch with flint-tipped spears. They have learned the ways of the giants, how to follow them, how to wait, how to attack. One falls, then another. Bones are torn out, tusks taken to be carved into idols, tools, souvenirs. The pack continues on its way, less and less so. Its paths are narrowing. The last survivors find refuge on small Arctic islands where the cold persists. They survive for another 1,000 years, dwindling until their last breath vanishes in the icy wind. The world warms. The ice melts and forms rivers. The rivers become oceans. The grasslands are disappearing under the rising sea level. The forests stretched out, green and dense, swallowing up the open plains. The age of giants comes to an end. Beneath the permafrost lie buried tusks, their ivory still glistening beneath millennia of ice. Deep within limestone caves, claw marks crisscross the walls where the last sloths once clambered. In the soft peat of forgotten swamps, moa footprints remain imprinted in the earth. Mammoth hairs still appear on the frozen banks of rivers, reddish, thick. It still smells faintly of wild grass and snow. Scientists dream of bringing him back, of inserting his genetic code into the living elephant, of reigniting the Ice Age. But the ice is gone, and with it, the world he knew. Even if he were reborn, where would he walk? What wind would he breathe? What herd would answer his call? In the forests where the sloth once fed, the trees have disappeared. In the valleys of New Zealand, silence reigns where the moa once roared through the morning mist. The great beasts survive only in cave paintings, their silhouettes traced with ochre by hands illuminated by the fire that both venerated and destroyed them. The age of giants has come to an end. The cold receded, and with it went the rhythm of that ancient world. Spring arrived and lingered for too long. The ice that defined their lives melted into history. Now, while the modern world teems with noise and light, the ghosts of the Pleistocene remain on the fringes of thought. Their extinction was our beginning. The spear replaced the tusk, fire replaced furs. The hunter became the last giant in the world, and now the ice is melting again and the seas are rising once more. Because although we have inherited the earth, we walk on the bones of those who walked it better.